What's up, internet? Good old YouTube. Let's see here. I feel like it takes a second to warm up and get into this. I recently took a autism spectrum disorder test through Prosper Health. And I just kind of wanted to openly process the results, why I did it, maybe the cost, whether if this was something you were interested in doing, maybe it would be something helpful, whether you do online or in-person testing. If I can remember all the different little points, I'll address that. But, for me, it's been an interesting few weeks in general because I've gotten back into a creative process. I was a professional songwriter for over 10 years, for TV and film and all this other kind of stuff. If you're tuning in to me for the very first time, or you're one of my current 25 subscribers and friends who have rejoined me on a new channel, either way, grateful you're here. And I have just been in this chapter of self-discovery the last 30 days. And I've had, as many of my friends know and people have known in my immediate circles and stuff, after my dad died on Christmas of 2020, I had some mental health crises for kind of some ongoing years, battled with addiction. I'm 2.5 years or so sober at this point. And it's been kind of a crazy last 5 years for me since my dad passing, and just kind of having a crazy crash out and just life be lifing, it do be doing that. And that, again, that's okay. What does all that have to do with me trying to figure out if I have autism? Is trying to put myself into a cluster, right? Why would, a lot of my friends were like, you're not autistic. Why would you want to be autistic? All these types of things. And for me, it was I've had a multitude of different mental health diagnoses, which I'm not really going to dive into right now because I don't really, at this stage in my life, subscribe to virtually any of them, because I'm on, I don't take any medicine, I don't take any pharmaceuticals, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving any advice on whether they should or shouldn't take medical or medicine interventions, and they've certainly been helpful to me in the past, but that's not currently my story. Why would I want that is because, I have a lifetime of, which I told the psychologist that I did this interview, feeling othered and not feeling part of, and all that kind of stuff. But that in of itself does not make you obviously autistic. In the test, there were 3 categories that must be met for the diagnosis, and then 4 symptom-like behaviors. Where 2 of 4 had to be met. The symptom-like behaviors, I was 3 to 4, 4 out of 4 type stuff, though the doctor firmly gave me at least 2 of them. And then for the top part, I only banged 1 of the 3, which was eye contact. The other, which I found ironic, was you're too good at communicating and you don't get dysregulated enough in crowds to fit a autism spectrum disorder diagnosis, right? So, full reveal, the results for me was that I did not get a ASD diagnosis, which, I was hopeful for, not in the sense of really just in the sense of better understanding of myself. And the doctor was interesting because he was you can cross this off the list. And my initial reaction was can I? I could go see another doctor now that I have more clarity and try again, and maybe I will. Maybe I'll do an in-person assessment, and if that comes back, no, right? Then maybe, then I'll let it go in completion. But for now, I'm going to table it because, the doctor even had recommended some what is it called? Autism affirming therapy. And I was well, if I'm not autistic, why would I need autism affirming therapy? And he's well, you do have characteristics and traits. You just don't fit the guidelines of the DSM-5 for a disorder, and that was interesting because I had a conversation with a friend where I think as if I had been diagnosed as a child or had gone through the testing as a young man, but really a child, especially because that's where the research is most prevalent, I would have probably, my gut says I would have qualified for it, but, I guess I'll never know, but in the same breath, it's that taking a few days to be like psychoanalyzed for a few hours every morning over Zoom was really interesting because it reminded me of, I'm 32, of a younger version of myself, what it was like in crowds, how I overcame my anxieties with, different social behaviors, not necessarily knowing how to fit in, not knowing how to, which like all kids to a certain extent don't know how to fit in, right? Like we are all, as we grow up, trying to figure out how to engage with others, right? So again, that in of itself wouldn't qualify a diagnosis, but like I, had intense play alone, right? Like I would go into my room for hours at a time and like stem or like have hand motions and try to create worlds in my head. And I was even flagged for autism when I was 5 or 6 in school, somewhere around first grade, because of the way that I was playing with toys and engaging with my peers. And my family did not opt to do the formal testing then. And that it would have been curious because like maybe my life would have gone in a, what does a diagnosis even mean, right? Like, is it important? Maybe to understand how we interface with ourselves and others, right? Like, do I look at people personally different depending on what their diagnosis is? No, and there's actually a great quote in a book I'm reading right now called Body Keeps the Score, which is like the classic on post-traumatic stress, where, and I'm paraphrasing here, but one of the new doctors is like, do you think that this patient is schizophrenic or schizoactivity? And the experienced doctor says, I think that it's like John. I think that this patient is John, right? Like call him by his name. Like people are not their diagnosis, they are people. And I think that in mental health, there's been like a lot of movement to like person first language and stuff like that. So it's like, it's a person with autism, not a autistic person, right? Like there's a whole dialogue around there that I'm not going to dive like too much into, but it is profoundly interesting how we see ourselves through the lenses of others and how that mirrors back in diagnostics, which is probably why I'm going to get a graduate degree as a clinical mental health counselor and then pursue a psychology degree, whether PsyD or just a PhD in psychology, because I find diagnostics to be fantastically interesting, and the music business beat me to a pulp, so I don't really know if I have the interest in going back into that like full time, but it is certainly something as a special interest or a deep passion that I will continue to do. So I appreciate those that have listened to the one song that's on this channel, and there will be more. Anywho, back to the ASD stuff. So I remember the doctor was like, when he was reading me my results, he was like, you seem visibly upset, right? Like I'm not making any eye contact with the camera. I'm kind of looking off and fidgeting with my rings, like all that kind of stuff to like listen and process. And he like stopped and he was like, do we need to talk about this? I was like, no, like I'd actually prefer you just give me the full report. I already know at this point that I'm not getting the diagnostic that I thought I was going to get. Maybe that was part of the issue of why I had such a response to it, because I really thought, I was like, this is the missing piece, you know what I mean? And so, in my understanding of self, right? And I realized that to expect a doctor in a 5 to 6 hour window to encompass my entire life of experiences into a cluster of symptoms and thus give me a diagnosis is it's a pretty big ask. And he was like, I feel like maybe you could have your clinician and therapist, because I do therapy regularly, do some stuff around feeling other. And I was like, at this stage in the game at 32, like I'm not like dying for approval or acceptance, right? Like I'm literally trying to learn, more tools and skill sets and interfacing with others, like why did I even look into getting this diagnosis in the first place, or like get the testing, right? Was because romantic partners over the years, like a bunch of the girls I've dated since, turning 18 have had, they've mentioned that they thought maybe, there was some neurodivergency, maybe I was on the spectrum because of a multitude of ways that I like soothe, and like my need for certain textures, and like all the things that the doctor did agree were characteristics of autism. But again, because my life at this point and my communication skills and my ability to read body language which I think is a learned skill. I don't think that came to me at all as a child, but that's neither here nor there, I suppose, is not, it doesn't match the characteristic of the DSM-5 for a disorder, right? And so it, to me, begs a lot of questions of like, you know, is there, like, obviously autism doesn't go away, but is there maybe a different criteria for adults, like, and versus children and boys and girls? It presents differently. Like, again, why I think diagnostics is so important is that if all the research had been on young boys, like, wouldn't that make it really hard for an adult woman, you know what I mean, that may be autistic or on the spectrum in some capacity, especially if they're more high functioning, to get a proper diagnosis, because the terms and the stuff in the DSM-5 is heavily weighted towards, you know, boys and men, right? And like so there's gaps in research, and that's an overarching thing in the medical community in general, right? And I won't dive into that so deeply in this video because I'm trying to stay focused and not go on too many tangents and stuff. But, you know, so that, again, like, I didn't meet the criteria, which was fine, but it was, you know, frustrating in the sense that, like, as an adult who's trying to understand and take inventory of past actions and things that, you know, when I was abusing drugs and alcohol, like, what was that to soothe? Was it from overstimulation? Is it grief from my father dying? It's probably a combination of all of them. Like, and the reason I like psychology is it's not as simple as being like, this is that, you know, all the time, right? Like, you know, some people respond to the death of the parent in one way, others respond another, but under the cluster of grief, maybe both behaviors are present, right? And so you really have to be able to deal with like a spider web of connections. It's not a linear A to B point, right? Like in any diagnostics or trauma-informed care, or like in any of that stuff, right? And that's, for me, why I like it, because it's like, okay, like maybe you or I'll just try to keep it to I statements. Like maybe I was bullied pretty bad in like middle school and high school to me, right? Like there's a scale, and like some people way worse, some people way less, but we respond to it, you know, to our understanding of self. For me, that was like, I'm going to go into the rap business and I'm going to become a musician and I'm going to show them, and I can do this. And I did, right? Like wrote for movies, toured, like played shows all over the country, you know, like signed autographs, all the validation from others that someone would have needed to be like, I'm a rapper, like this is great, you know, really helped. But in that same breath, it was something where like I was looking at this diagnostic to be like, was it something with my inability to read social situations, or did I just keep plowing through because of my own characteristics, right? I try not to think I and or others are so unique that we can't relate to others or end up in some type of group settings or group belonging to some group. And I think that was another part why I was crushed, is I was like, you know, I'm watching all this content on Instagram that, you know, as I'm looking into adult autism, they're getting memes and reels, and obviously the algorithm is like feeding into a pattern of like, oh, maybe you should get tested. This is what it looks like. You know, and that in of itself can probably cause a bit of a psychological effect where it's like a confirmation bias, like, wow, look at all these adults that kind of look like me and talk like me, and they're autistic, so maybe that's me, and I'll spend $1,000 to get into this group. Like, even that language is crazy, right? Because that's not the point. And I was listening to it was like a shot of clarity from a comedian. Let's say it's Trevor Noah. I hope I'm not getting his name wrong, but the guy that does the Kyle bits, he's so funny. And he was on a doctor was reacting to his thing where he said that he felt like there's a lot of stolen valor in the autistic community from people wanting to have like a disorder to like fit in, or like be like, oh, I'm, you know, the doctor saying instead of just being shy, like I'm autistic, so I'm unable to get into or it's harder for me to get into a social situation because I am easily overstimulated, right? And I thought to myself, wow, that's really telling, because does it take away from, like, obviously I would be, if I had been diagnosed, which again, I wasn't, I would have been higher functioning, right? And that brings up a lot because people are like, well, for people that are lower functioning who need a lot of help and they need, care and nurses, or they end up in group homes and like all that kind of stuff, how are you guys in the same spectrum, right? And that was really interesting because the reality of that is the symptoms of, or at least how I perceive it, the symptoms of what makes someone like autistic, the more, like, if you're so sensitive to sound that you begin to scream and have a physical fit when things are loud and banging, right? Like, obviously that is disorderly behavior, and you're unregulated, and you're not, it might be, you may not be able to keep a job, or you can't go outside, and like, it's really clear. For me, the reason I went to go get this diagnosis, one of the reasons I went to go, or felt comfortable going to get this testing done, because it was an uncomfortable experience for me, was that I'm in like the healthiest state of my life, right? Like, I'm 2.5 years sober. I'm exercise all the time. I have held down jobs outside of the entertainment business for, 2 years now. I took a year to work with foster children, and I'm going to make a whole video about that experience separately. But, like, I'm functioning, I guess, and that's tough to, I guess, for a doctor to be like, well, you have a disorder, because there's not a visible distress. And truthfully, many of the times that I was diagnosed with a disorder, it's because something was going wrong, right? And and it had been going wrong. Like, even when I got, and this will kind of tie into the bone the doctor threw me, was like, well, you were diagnosed with ADHD when you were 18 from a doctor, like, you're neurodivergent. I was like, I'm not looking for like a badge, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to understand how I interface with the world, like, I don't want to commoditize being neurodivergent. Like, I mean, I think that there's obviously, you look at things different than like neurotypical, but like, does neurotypical just mean that your brain functions fine and there's just no, like, I'm almost out of shock at what that even is supposed to mean, right? And maybe that's a video for another time, right? Because it's like we make neurodivergency, oh, they're special, they're unique, they're more capable, they're artistic, like the Einsteins, the whoever, right? Like those are the champions of neurodiversity, right? When like that puts a lot of pressure on people to be like excellent, and I think that it does a disservice for people that are like less functioning on the spectrum, right? It's like, at least is my gut. But yeah, the doctor was like, yeah, you're still like, you're very passionate and all this other stuff. And I was like, okay, like that's nice, man. But like, I'm trying to understand if, like, and you don't have to pathologize everything too, right? Like, if I need to rock or listen to music, like, I pretty much always have to listen to music to soothe and to like go from task to task and stuff like that. Like, maybe that's just how Jake is, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's okay. And I guess for those that are high functioning, like, if you were to go take a test and you don't get it, like, I encourage you just to accept you for you and to keep it pushing, because the reality is we all are trying to soothe in our own ways. And if it doesn't present in a way that's like a disorder, that's not, I mean, obviously that's not the end of the world. It's just more so that it's like, you're going to have to, or for me, again, trying to use I statements, I'm going to need to be like, all right, like, I may not have this group to associate with. I, of course, I have a lot of friends that are autistic, and on all, I've done work with people on various levels of the spectrum in a professional manner and in a volunteer manner. And I think I'll continue to do so just because it's a passion of mine, and it's a beautiful community. And maybe that's how I'm involved, right? Just to be of service, right? Like, I was hoping the doctor would like give me membership, and that didn't happen. And again, that's fine, because that's, his job. But I really, so we did the testing. It was about $1,000. I'm fortunate that I was able to afford it. It was expensive. It is covered by insurance for a lot of places. It was not for me in North Carolina to do it virtually, so I paid out of pocket. I think that it is a hard thing to do online, but it is possible. I would be careful to get too wrapped into into the marketing campaigns that all these companies do. I think that they, make the like autism, like, the doctor that I was listening to that was reacting to Trevor Noah, he's very interesting. He was like, there's no medical intervention, there's no medicine. And I'll probably get to some of my last points with this, because I realize I've been going 20 minutes. Is that, there's no prescription, there's no treatment plan, right? Like, you just pretty much either do psychotherapy or behavioral treatment, which is fine. And because of that, he's like, if you are high functioning enough that you don't need a treatment plan to function, like, is it a being of service to you? Like, what is really the intention of this? And I thought about that, because I was like, I don't really need any extra help or any extra stuff at this stage of the game, thank God. But it's just like, what is the purpose of that? And, I thought it was interesting that the doctor, despite me at Prosper Health, despite me like having advocated for myself that I had abused prescription medicine and active addiction and, especially like ADHD medicine, he's like, well, if you see a psychiatrist and you do want to get medicated. And I literally was like, I don't. I have, for me personally, I have zero interest in any medical pharmaceutical intervention at this stage in my life. Like, would I take something if I needed to, or it was at that point in some way? Yeah, for sure. Like, that doesn't have anything to do with my sobriety, and it's fine, right? But it wasn't, I had this like cognitive thing with that being like, have you been listening to me at this entire time? Or maybe that's just the doctor's role to be like, hey, we've got a pill for that. We've got a pill for that, and I'm just like, I don't want any more of your pills. I don't want any more. I've had years and years of dealing with that. And I'm very fortunate that I'm been able to live a happy life without the need for any pharmaceuticals for over a year and some change, And when I did get off antipsychotics and things of that nature, I tapered for a year and did it with a psychiatrist. So that's an important thing to note for those who, you can reach out to me privately on Instagram or something if that's a journey that you're going on and we want to have that conversation. But yeah, that was strange. We're now 22 minutes in. Man, I wanted to talk about like, walking on my toes for a long time as a kid, and like all the behavioral stuff that I tried to convey to the doctor, as a boy and a teenager and a young man, and even why I was so overstimulated. That's why I started smoking marijuana at 16, and what that was like for me and stuff. But as this video has happened, I don't know if that's as important as much as like, for those that are out there thinking about getting diagnostic tests, I think it's a great experience. Like, I think that whether you get it or don't, for me, I had to be like, don't go, Jake, don't run to another doctor until you get the answer you want, right? Like, sit with this for a little bit and see what this means to you or doesn't, right? Read the report, which maybe I'll do another video that's like super specific once I get the report back in like a week or two, like the written assessment, so I can really go line by line and kind of talk about it. I think that's probably the video that will be better for symptoms and all that kind of stuff. But I would, I texted a lot of my friends about this as I was doing it, because it made me anxious to be psychoanalyzed, especially with a history of institutionalization. That was not as fun. But it was something that was really, it was something that was really helpful to like dive into and like self-reflect, right? Yeah, I'm feeling like this is probably around the point where, well, let me pause for a second and make sure that I've got nothing else to say on this topic. Yeah, so I went through like why I wasn't formally diagnosed. Part of it was, again, there's a top 3 cluster of a chart. I guess I can put the link or something in the test, but you have to have like an eye contact issue, and I'm paraphrasing here, like nonverbal communication issues, and like relationship management issues and communication issues, like really like deeply or in a way that it's like disorderly behavior. And the doctor was like, you were just too empathetic and you communicate too succinctly and you can read a conversation too well at this point for me to give you a diagnosis of a disorder. And again, like I feel like that's selling high functioning autistic people, like people with autism, like short, or at least I feel that way. Again, I that's just my take on it. But it is a blessing to be in a stage in my life where, like, even to do this type of video, I used to have to do drugs to get on camera and talk. Like it was so overwhelming for me to have this conversation with myself. I mean, there's no one here. I'm in an empty room. But I'm at a stage in my life where that's not the case, and I'm really grateful for that. Yeah, I think that this has been a fun self-reflection. If you guys have like questions, maybe I didn't cover something, I kind of just turned the camera on and just let my mind wander and process. Leave it in the comments. Reach out to me on Instagram at jwelljake, JWELL Jake. As always, thanks to everyone that subscribed to this new channel. I deeply appreciate it, and I will continue to do these long format vlog videos because I really enjoy them. And if you have a friend who is thinking about getting tested and you think that this video would be helpful for them, and seeing how I had this conversation with myself and how it was with the doctors and stuff, then I would send it to them because I would appreciate it. And it's always fun to talk and share stuff with people that are into it. It's not really a great way to ever end these videos, so I guess I'm just gonna wave goodbye and see you guys next time.